You ever have one of those moments where you think, okay, this has to be a prank. There's no way this is actually happening. Yeah, that was me. Standing barefoot on my porch, coffee in hand, staring down at the official-looking letter I just pulled out of my mailbox. It had all the usual hallmarks of HOA madness: bold text, unnecessary capitalization, and that passive-aggressive tone that somehow made paper feel smug. But the real kicker, the complaint wasn't about my yard, not about my mailbox being the wrong shade of beige. No, it was a noise complaint. About my camel. Let me rewind. My name's Marcus. I'm a 34-year-old software engineer, and I live in a painfully quiet suburban cul-de-sac where the HOA is more feared than the IRS. I bought the place 2 years ago because the neighborhood was clean, crime-free, and community-focused. Turns out that was code for micromanaged, by people with too much time and zero personality. Now, the camel thing before you judge wasn't some midlife crisis impulse. My late uncle was a quirky zoologist who passed away and left behind 2 things: his dusty ranch property in Arizona and a 7-year-old dromedary camel named Charlie. The will was specific. Charlie goes to Marcus. He's calm, well, and won't spit unless provoked. Treat him like family, and I did. Since my property actually backs up to a large privately owned field and technically has the zoning for unusual livestock, I made a deal with the city. I built a secure shelter, installed fencing, had Charlie checked by a vet, and got all the legal approvals. No drama, no complaints. That isn't till she moved in. Enter Karen. I wish I were being lazy using that name, but her real name is literally Karen Delancey. She moved into the corner lot 2 months ago, right across the street. Mid-50s, platinum blonde bob, always. In a windbreaker, always holding a coffee cup with her name written in giant black Sharpie letters. She made a huge deal during the HOA welcome meeting about quietness being the #1 priority, and how she left the city to get away from chaos. Of course, she left out that her last neighborhood HOA voted to expel her for stalking a neighbor's parrot with binoculars. Yes, I found that out later. At first, I tried being polite. When she waved, I waved back. When she dropped by to ask about the camel, I explained everything. Calmly that Charlie was legal, quiet, clean, and better behaved than half the humans on the block. She gave me a weird look, sniffed, and said, "Well, I don't know how they do things wherever you're from, but this is a respectable community." That was strike 1. I started noticing weird things. I'd catch her standing on the sidewalk across from my house, just watching, sometimes with a phone, sometimes with binoculars. Once, I swear she had a measuring tape. I started getting HOA violation warnings out of nowhere, fence height review, exterior color coordination, reapproval, and the classic non-standard fauna notification. I wasn't stupid, I knew who was behind them, but the noise complaint, that took it to a new level. Apparently, someone claimed my camel was howling at night and creating a disruptive desert-like ambience that made it hard to sleep. They even added, sounds like a dying bagpipe being stomped on by an elephant. I actually laughed when I read that part, but the HOA didn't find it funny. They demanded a full inspection, and if noise was confirmed, Charlie would have to be relocated or removed. Here's the thing, Charlie doesn't make noise, not like that. Sure, he grunts softly when he sees me, kind of like a what's up sound, but otherwise, he's quieter than most lawnmowers in this neighborhood, and I had recordings to prove it. Still, The letter meant war. Karen had escalated from weird stares and gossip to full-blown sabotage. So, I called in a favor. My buddy Greg is an environmental audio engineer. That's a thing, and he helped me set up discrete sound monitors around my backyard. Over the course of 7 days, we recorded 98 hours of audio and filtered out every natural noise wind, crickets, distant cars, and even a neighbor's squeaky porch swing. You know what we didn't hear? A single sound from Charlie. But you know what we did hear? Karen, on the phone, late at night, standing on her patio, saying things like, "I don't care if it's not loud enough, just file the damn complaint. We're not living next to a zoo, I'll make sure of it. If the HOA won't listen, I'll record something." Myself, that last one hit me like a truck. She was trying to fake evidence, and suddenly I realized Dyer might be able to prove not just that the complaint was false, but that Karen herself was manipulating the entire HOA to push me out. And that's when I started planning my own move. A legal, ethical, but absolutely savage move. But first, I needed one thing: proof she didn't even live here legally, because what I found next, that would blow this whole thing wide open. So here I was, sitting in my garage with a thermos of black coffee and a USB drive full of clean Camel silence and Karen's late-night plotting, thinking, all right, let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. I already knew the HOA could be ridiculous, but I didn't realize how deeply Karen had sunk her claws into them. Every complaint, every sudden violation, every neighborhood whisper that I was running some kind of exotic pet circus, it all had her fingerprints. But if I wanted to end this once and for all, I couldn't just prove Charlie was quiet. I had to dismantle Karen's credibility entirely. That meant going after the one thing she thought was untouchable, her right to even be here now. Here's where the story gets weird in the best way. My neighbor, Mrs. Davenport, is in her late 70s, has lived on this street since the 80s, and knows everything. Think of her as the real-life Google of the cul-de-sac. She's the one who told me once, over a shared fence line, if someone's sprinklers turn on 3 minutes too early, I'll hear it. She's not nosy, she's just ... aware. I casually brought up Karen while helping her replant her tomato bed. "Funny you mention her," she said, squinting into the sun. I never saw a moving truck when she arrived. Just one black SUV, no welcome committee either. She just ... showed up. That was strange. All new residents usually get the welcome basket with coupons, a newsletter, and a mini American flag on a stick. I got one. Davenport gave me banana bread when I moved in. It's a thing here. No basket, no deed, and no hello, she added. That's not how we do things around here. And that's when I knew I had my opening. I headed to the county records office that afternoon. It was an online system, thankfully, and all I needed was the address. Karen's house corner lot, 3006 Briar Grove Lane. I typed it in, the owner, Alan V. Fifth Delancey, okay, could be her husband. But then I clicked on the details. The property had been owned by Alan for 6 years. There was no mention of a co-owner, no change, indeed. No rental license filed, no temporary occupant form, nada. Next, I did something maybe a little over the line, but hey, it was public info. I looked up Alan Delancey on social media. He lived in Oregon. He was a retired marine biologist, and according to his posts, Karen was his sister, not his spouse. She'd apparently moved in with him temporarily after a rough divorce. There was even a birthday post. So glad my sister Karen is with me while she gets back on her feet. Let me break that down for you. She wasn't on the deed. She wasn't a legal resident. She wasn't paying rent. And she wasn't registered with the HOA. In other words, Karen didn't officially live here. The HOA's own bylaws were clear. To file a formal complaint, you had to be a registered property owner or leaseholder. Karen was neither. She had no legal standing to complain about anything, let alone file multiple violations against a man and his camel. Now I had proof. The sound recordings, her own words, and now documentation. She had no legal right to act like a resident. But instead of going straight to the HOA, I wanted one more card to play a witness. That's where John came in. John is the next-door neighbor to Karen's house. Quiet guy, teaches history at the high school, keeps to himself mostly, but we've chatted at HOA meetings before. I swung by casually and asked if he'd had any issues with Karen. He didn't even let me finish the sentence. "Oh man," he said, "she's nuts." I asked what he meant. She tried to tell me my mailbox was crooked. It's been in the same spot for 10 years. She left a note on my door telling me to trim my roses because they're encroaching on sidewalk space. Then she tried to tell my wife to stop parking in front of our own house. I asked if he knew she wasn't on the deed. He laughed. "She's not even supposed to be here. Alan asked me to keep an eye on the place while he's gone. She just showed up. No lease, no nothing. That was it. Game over." I thanked John, went home, and started drafting my email. I compiled everything: audio clips, transcripts, screenshots of the property records, and a summary timeline of Karen's antics. And then, with the calm of a man who knows he's holding all the cards, I CC'd the entire HOA board attached to the evidence, and hit send. Subject line: unauthorized resident files, fraudulent complaint, urgent review, requested. And then I waited, not for long. 2 days later, I got a response. It was short, formal. "We will be conducting an immediate review of all complaints filed by Ms. Delancey and her eligibility to engage in HOA actions. Further updates to follow." But I wasn't done yet. Because I hadn't just embarrassed her, I'd officially triggered a clause in the HOA. By laws I knew most people had forgotten. If a non-resident engages in false reporting, harassment, or impersonation of a member, they can be banned from all HOA meetings, communications, and community privileges. In short, Karen was about to be banned from the HOA itself. And the best part, she didn't know it yet. You'd think, after exposing someone for fraud, they'd back off, right? Maybe retreat into silence and lay low until the heat dies down. Yeah, not Karen. 3 days after I submitted all the evidence, I woke up to find an envelope taped to my front door. Not mailed, not placed neatly in my mailbox, taped to my door. Inside was a handwritten letter, sloppy cursive, no punctuation, just rage in ink form. It read, "I know what you're trying to do. You can't make me leave. This is my neighborhood too. The HOA isn't on your side. Enjoy your stupid camel while it lasts." She signed it Karen D. like she was proud. I didn't respond. I didn't even take it personally, because I knew something she didn't. The HOA was already moving, quietly, legally, and fast. That afternoon, I got an official email from the HOA secretary. They were calling a special hearing a rare thing usually reserved for serious violations or financial misconduct. But this wasn't just about Karen submitting fake complaints anymore. No, this was a formal investigation into fraudulent activity by a non-registered resident and potential harassment of a fellow homeowner. It was scheduled for Friday at 7 p.m. in the HOA clubhouse. Karen was invited. So was I, and everyone on the board would be there, including President Carol Stein. Now, Carol's a tough one. She's the kind of person who'll fine you $50 if your trash can lid is flipped sideways, but she's also fair. Old school, HOA, authority figure, and when she's pissed off, even the board listens. So, I prepared. I made a presentation. I know, that sounds ridiculous. But I'm a software engineer, remember? Data is my love language. So I laid it all out. In a clean 3-section PowerPoint. The complaint, showing the original noise report, audio logs, and times. The lie, screenshots from the public deed registry and Alan Delancey's social media confirming Karen's non-resident status. The behavior, voice recordings, written threats, and neighbor statements from both Mrs. Davenport and John, I printed. Physical packets. I brought a thumb drive. I even printed out the HOA's own bylaws and highlighted the rules she violated. When Friday rolled around, the clubhouse was buzzing. Word had spread that something juicy was about to go down, and HOA drama is the closest thing to the Super Bowl around here. I walked in wearing jeans and a polo. Karen was already there sitting in the front row, wearing a bright pink jacket, arms crossed like she was ready to sue someone. She glared at me as I walked by. I smiled back. Carol began the meeting with her usual stern tone. We are here to review a serious matter brought to our attention by homeowner Marcus Dean regarding a series of complaints made by Ms. Karen Delancey, who may not have legal standing in this community. Karen immediately stood up. Excuse me, may not. I live here. I have every right to say what goes on in my own neighborhood. Carol didn't flinch. You will have time to speak. But first, Mr. Dean, you have the floor. I stood up, plugged in my flash drive, and let the first slide pop on screen. The complaint, fact or fiction. I calmly walked them through everything. I didn't embellish. I didn't insult Karen. I let the data speak for itself. When I got to the audio clips, people in the back gasped. When I showed the property records, I heard someone whisper, "Oh damn." And when I played Karen's own voice saying, "Just file the damn complaint," there was complete silence. I finished with a printed quote from the HOA bylaws only. Registered property owners or legal tenants may submit formal complaints, violations, or participate in HOA enforcement action. Then I sat down. Carol turned to Karen. Ms. Delancey, would you like to respond? Karen stood up and started in with a voice shaking somewhere between rage and panic. This is all just noise. I've lived here for months. My brother owns the house. That should count. I'm not some squatter. That camel is disrupting the entire street, and everyone is too scared to say anything. I have every right to. Carol cut her off. Karen, you don't. And now we have the proof. The board conferred for a few minutes in hushed voices. Then Carol stood, cleared her throat, and said, effective immediately, Ms. Karen Delancey is prohibited from submitting HOA complaints, attending meetings, or representing herself as a community member in any official capacity. Further, we are issuing a formal trespass notice, unless her brother files a legal residency update or lease form. Ms. Delancey is considered unauthorized. Karen stared blankly. You can't do that. Carol looked her dead in the eye. We just did, and with that, she banged her tiny wooden gavel like it was a judge's hammer. The room exploded in quiet murmurs. Karen turned to me, her face beet red. "This isn't over." I shrugged. "Actually, it is." She stormed out, and I didn't hear from her again for 3 days. You'd think, after being publicly humiliated at an official HOA hearing, most people would pack up, lick their wounds, and maybe, just maybe, learn a lesson. Not Karen, not even close. 3 days after she got officially banned from HOA activities, I started to feel something was off. I couldn't explain it at first, just a weird tension in the air. Neighbors were acting jumpy. My security lights were blinking on, more often at night, and one morning, I found something that really set off alarms. My mailbox had been ripped off the post, not dented, not tipped, ripped off. And next to it, on the lawn, was a plastic garden flamingo. Karen's I'd seen it before, proudly planted in her front yard like it was her version of a no trespassing sign. Coincidence? Not likely. I checked my doorbell, cam footage, but it had been disconnected sometime between 2:43 and 3:01 a.m. The wire had been cleanly cut. Not chewed, not torn, cut. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't finished. She was escalating, so I did what any reasonable man who owns a camel and has already beaten a fake neighbor in an HOA showdown would do. I called the police, now. You might think they'd laugh when I told them someone was stalking me over a camel named Charlie. But no, this officer, Officer Layton, took it seriously, especially when I showed him the HOA ban letter, the previous complaint trail, and the threatening handwritten note Karen left on my door. Layton raised an eyebrow when I showed him the security cam cut. "That's trespassing and tampering with your surveillance equipment. That's a misdemeanor at minimum." He filed a report, promised to do a drive-by that night, and advised me to get floodlights for my backyard. He even suggested I install a motion alarm on my gate, just in case Karen tried to mess with Charlie. And thank whatever gods protect camels, because that very night she did. 2:11 a.m. motion sensor goes off, siren blares, lights snap on, I sprint. Outside in my robe with my phone flashlight, heart pounding, and there she is, Karen. In my backyard, wearing a hoodie, holding something shiny looked like a spray bottle. She froze in the spotlight like a raccoon caught raiding a trash can. Then she screamed, dropped the bottle, and ran right into Officer Layton's headlights. See, he had been patrolling. Right on time, pulled up just in time to see Karen sprinting through my backyard like a lunatic. He hit the siren. Karen stopped dead in her tracks, hands up, breathing like she'd just finished a triathlon. I watched from the back porch as Layton cuffed her calmly, methodically, and asked her what she was doing. Her response: "I was just spraying some weed killer. I thought he had poison ivy." Layton looked at the bottle. It was not weed killer. It was industrial animal repellent, meant for deer and coyotes, not camels. That was it, the last straw. Officer Layton, read her rights: trespassing, vandalism, harassment, attempted animal cruelty, all of it, and the kicker. She wasn't just going to be banned from the HOA now. She was going to be banned from the entire subdivision. I gave my statement, handed over the footage, and watched as she was driven away in the back of a squad car, still screaming, "I'm not done. I'm still right." The next morning, the HOA board released an official statement in the community newsletter, following multiple confirmed violations, unauthorized residency, and criminal charges. Ms. Karen Delancey is permanently barred from Briar Grove Estates. Property, Any re-entry will be considered trespassing and prosecuted to the fullest extent. It was the most treed HOA update in history, and the neighborhood. They threw a block party. I'm not even joking. John brought barbecue. Mrs. Davenport made her famous lemon bars. Carol stone-faced, Carol actually smiled. People brought folding chairs and lit fire pits and toasted marshmallows. And Charlie, he got a custom HOA MVP sash made out of green velvet. He wore it like a king. It's funny how quiet life can feel after chaos leaves the stage. With Karen gone and, I mean really, gone, the neighborhood felt like it finally exhaled. No more complaints. No more midnight sabotage. No more shrieking banshee energy haunting my ring cam like a suburban horror movie. Just peace. I'd almost forgotten what that felt like. It didn't happen instantly, of course. There were still whispers. People still peeked out their blinds every time they saw a pink car, wondering if Karen had snuck back like some kind of HOA But slowly, surely, we all started reclaiming our calm, and Charlie, my beautiful, serene, Humpty Humpty desert boy, he became a local legend. No, seriously, it started small. A few kids asking to pet him while walking by. A couple parents requesting a photo during evening strolls. Then Carol, of all people, proposed a community spirit event and suggested that, get this, I offer camel rides in the coal-d-sack.I. Thought she was joking. She was not. We need something light after all the recent drama, she said, eyeing the place where Karen used to lurk. And besides, Charlie's become kind of a mascot. Might as well make it official. So yeah, I did it. I got a little saddle set up, nothing fancy, just safe and secure. I made up a waiver form you learn quick in an HOA world, and one sunny Saturday, we launched Briar Grove's first annual Camel Carnival. It was a hit. Kids laughed, parents took selfies. The local ice cream truck parked next to my driveway and gave out Camel Crunch cones. Someone brought a Bluetooth speaker and played desert music from Aladdin. And there, in the middle of it all, was Charlie chewing calmly, blinking slowly, just vibing with the kids on his back. Honestly, it healed the whole street. Even Carol smiled and said, This is good. I was wrong about you and that animal. I nearly fell over, but the revenge cherry on top. Oh, that came a week later. I was in my front yard, watering my hibiscus, when I saw a familiar pink car roll up. Windows tinted, parked at the very edge of the subdivision. A figure inside Karen just watching. I didn't panic. I didn't even move. Because just 2 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up behind her. Out stepped Officer Layton, apparently. After the neighborhood party, a few folks added Karen to their watch list app. The HOA had also installed license plate readers at both entrances, and when Karen tried to sneak back in, the system flagged her instantly. She got ticketed for violating the trespass order, again. Layton told me later that when he knocked on her window, she screamed, I was just making sure he's not abusing the camel. To which he replied, Ma'am, the camel has better health care than most Americans. She sped off. That was the last time anyone saw her near Briar Grove. A few weeks later, I got an email from a local news outlet. Apparently, someone had posted about Charlie's Camel Carnival online, and it had gone mildly viral. They wanted to do a human interest piece. You better believe I said yes. The article went live on a Friday. Headline, From HOA Nightmare to Neighborhood Hero. How one man and his camel united a community. The story got picked up by local radio. I even got a shout out from the mayor's office. And best of all, The HOA, the same one that once fined me for a crooked recycling bin, asked me to join the Community Engagement Committee. The camel guy. Life has a weird sense of humor, doesn't it? Looking back, I still can't believe how one woman's unhinged vendetta over a non-barking, drummer-free, peaceful camel spiraled into her own downfall. All because she couldn't mind her own business. All because she thought rules were for other people. But what she didn't count on was a community finally tired of the nonsense, and one gimme who refused to be bullied out of his own backyard. You see, in this world, some people ride camels, and some people just act like one.